Well, let's move on into talking a little bit about part two, which was kind of the whole genesis of actually ending up with you on the show, Justin. I happened to reach out to your Day by Day movie Twitter account. I don't know if that's you that does that or other people, but I just happened to slide into their DMs, as the young kids say these days, and asked, "Hey, what's the impact of head coach Scott Frost getting fired going to have on part two, and whether or not you're going to have to change the final cut or any of that stuff?" So we'll get into that. But before we get to that spot, we need to talk about 1995 a little bit. As you said, greatest college football team in history, which pisses ESPN off to no end, which I absolutely love. Although we know, and we know back then there was a lot of stuff going on with that team. You had obviously the stuff with Lawrence Phillips, and then some similar allegations came out like a few days later against Damon Benning, which ended up being not true. And of course, you had Christian Peter being accused of sexual assault by someone, and then Grant Wistrom showing up at the Lombardi Awards ceremony with a black eye because he was defending a young lady in a bar. Good Lord, without having to give up too much about part two away, are some of those issues dressed from the point of view of the players themselves as well as some of their teammates and coaches at that time in this part?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the guys definitely don't steer away from it. And very
Good.
much. Movie two, hold on. If you enjoyed movie one, then movie two is quite a ride. It cranks, it gets ramped up. There's not many times where you do like a sequel to per se, and it turns out maybe better. I'm not saying it's better. It's a different movie altogether, but it is intense.
Okay.
And but yes, and the big part is because of a lot of the storylines that came out of '95. Another one was Riley Washington, who was falsely accused of shooting at a quick shot, and we even do sit down with Riley Washington and go over what happened there and the impact that had on him.
There he goes.
And I had a feeling that was about to happen based on what was going on with this audio. Folks, we are so sorry that Justin's having some issues with his connection, but we'll get him back here hopefully in a few minutes and continue the story because we were really about to get into the good stuff, especially with talking about Brooke, because that one still kicks me dead in the gut, as well as the way Lawrence Phillips' life ended. But we'll just kind of sit here and hang out and see if Justin's able to get a better connection, get back with us. And looks like, speak of the devil, and the devil appears. Hey, bud. You know what? It's okay. This information is worth it to me. Absolutely worth it to me.
I'm
sure it will be
cliffhangers. That's all, guys. Trying to keep the
That's what it is. The truth comes out.
You were just finished talking about Riley Washington,
right?
And yes. I don't know where you were going next. After that, I thought you were heading a different direction, but. Was that all you had to say about that, or?
Yeah, we were just, we sit down with all the guys and go really direct. Obviously, the Lawrence Phillips one is interesting because you had a lot of people, some guys that really did not want to talk about that, and other guys that did. But it was very important. It's really important in telling of accurate story, and what you're going to get is. It's just we approach it from all the angles of what was going on, and
cool.
It was a tough subject to cover, but we didn't want to shy away from it, and so we tackled a lot of those issues and how that impacted the team for sure.
So, transitioning over to the death of Brooke Beringer at the end of that '95 season. I saw in the trailer the emotion on the face of his former quarterback coach, Turner Gill. I can only imagine what that interview was like. And I admit it was really hard to watch the footage of him playing in part one because that kicked me in the gut, and it still hurts to just say his name to this day because of how much he meant to the team. I can only imagine the emotion was just as raw for the players as they looked back on what happened with Brooke. I imagine there's quite a bit of time devoted to that particular time in Husker history, as Mr. Justin LePera is still unable to maintain a decent connection. Lord in heaven, have mercy. Let us make this work. And I can't hear you now. Oh, there you are. I wonder some of it if it isn't my internet, because you're pixelated like crazy, and usually you aren't. So, oops.
Oh,
there we go.
I've got really bad internet right now. I don't know what it's been in the last like 3 weeks for me. I keep getting bad internet connection. I think I might just need to have an Ethernet hookup.
That's what I've been doing. Justin, I just finished waxing eloquent about Brooke. So what was it like talking to those guys about that guy? Because he meant so much to everybody.
Yeah, it was tough. They, it's his best friends, like, from Aaron Graham to a lot of those guys that, it's very tough for them to talk about it, but they wanted to make sure his story was told and that he understood who he was. So there was a lot of pride in telling that story. And it's so important to, obviously, the university, not just the football team, but what he represents to the state, to the university, and his story is so important. And I'd love to see actually, turn into a Hollywood movie about what he accomplished. It's greater than any Rudy or any other sports story, I think, out there, about the impact he made when he wasn't even playing. It's incredible. It was here, he's supposed to go on to the NFL, and that's going to be his great moment, as Ron Brown kind of speaks to, but it was actually lived out in that 95 season when he wasn't playing. And it's just, his story is, it's heartbreaking. But what he was at such a young age, think how young he was, the impact he still has on all of us that know the story. It changed, he's changed so many lives. We don't have no idea how many lives he's changed.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think Brooks' story is one of those that, I'll never forget. His selflessness and being a teammate, and when he was needed, he was always there, and he was, and he always performed. I remember that Michigan State game when Tommy went out with that deep thigh bruise, and he just came in like he was warmed up already, and he performed outstanding. And it didn't hurt that Lawrence went for 210 or something in that game. So, as tragic as losing Brooke is, for me, when I heard what happened to Lawrence Phillips, him taking his own life in his prison cell, did you tackle that topic at all? Was that something that the guys talked about? Oops. And of course, the most poignant conversation of them all. Scott, it's been a night, hasn't it? I feel bad for him.
Growing pains as a podcast.
Yep.
I feel like
I feel bad for Justin, because I know he desperately wants to talk about this stuff, and technology is just not cooperating. And who knows? Maybe the devil doesn't want people to hear what he has to say either, because it's good stuff, But
that's so strange. I wonder. I wonder what the deal is with just the internet. I mean, I think one of the things that I just did, and I could be wrong, it could just be an anecdote, but I changed from logic capture to just like raw.
Your raw camera feed.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I switched it up. Hopefully this works a little bit better. I'm on it.
Damn, that sounds good. It sounds real good.
Yeah, you sound crystal clear.
Okay, perfect. Got to a different location, and awesome.
Hopefully it stays that way, and the cell phone gremlins don't intervene. So
here we go.
I was just finishing up asking about what part the end of Lawrence Phillips' life plays in the documentary, if any.
Yes. So, and you're going to see a lot of emotion from guys like Clinton Childs, who was one of his best friends. And you know, that was the other thing, is like, they even did a movie about Lawrence Phillips. Showtime did, telling his story. And the big thing we wanted to do is, like, you can use some of these stories as, as conflict pieces to the film, and really kind of just use a person's story to kind of build your own, whatever the big picture is of the story. And what we didn't want to do is do that where we don't, if we're going to go into Lawrence Phillips, then let's go into Lawrence Phillips and let's tell his full story. And so you're going to hear another side about Lawrence Phillips that maybe you haven't heard about from these other films. You're going to hear about that with even hopefully with Brooke. You're going to see Brooke was not, he was I'd never met him personally, but he comes off very nice, and maybe you don't even think like, oh, he's kind of, humble, but no, this guy was a fierce competitor.
Yeah.
And him and Tommy did not like each other. Why? Right. Because he wants his job. So hopefully you're getting that side of these guys as well. The real story, the full story. And that was the big thing for Tom Osborne was he wanted to make sure if we're going to tell this story, he's like, just tell it accurately, just tell the real story.
Nice.
And that was the big thing. And that's hopefully what we did.